Thank you for your patience, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Executive Chief Matt Slinkard with the Houston Police Department. I have with me Executive Assistant Chief Larry Satterwhite and Assistant Chief Ban 10, and we have many more of our personnel on scene behind us. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you some preliminary information and a briefing and a rundown about this officer-involved shooting incident following a lengthy pursuit that we're engaged in today. So before I do that, I want to pause for just a second, and I want to say a thank you to all of our veterans, all of our current and past veterans, and I want to thank you for your service as we remember your wonderful service to our nation on this Veterans Day. Also, our Veterans Day parade that we were engaged in this morning will be part of my comments, and I'll explain to you how that fits into this scenario. Understand that there's still going to be a lot of investigation to do between multiple agencies on this incident, so I won't have all the answers that you need this afternoon, but I'm going to go through systematically what we know right now, what happened today, so that you leave here with no confusion about what actually occurred and what we know up to this point. So we need to rewind to Monday. Monday of this week, there was an incident at the Precinct 4 substation off Hallsworth Road in the Spring area. And Precinct 4, obviously Constable Mark Herman and Precinct 4's office, great partners, they're out here as well, and I'll talk about their involvement in this case as well. And some of this information you will also have to get from Precinct 4 and Constable Herman, and we'll be working jointly on this throughout the investigation. But on Monday, there was a suspect that went through the parking lot of the Precinct 4 substation on Hallsworth Road and fired at the station. It's my understanding rounds actually penetrated the station, and they've been investigating that incident, and I think some of you may have already covered that story that occurred on Monday. That investigation has been ongoing from the Precinct 4 Constable's office. Through that investigation, through video and Crime Stoppers tips and other information, they developed a likely suspect in that case. And they were currently engaged in working on the proper warrant for deadly conduct or other charges for that suspect who they believed fired at the substation. The suspect that we have here on the scene today, we believe at this time to be that person. However, please understand that that's their investigation and there will need to be some confirmation of that. However, as a continuation of that investigation, which began on Monday, Precinct 4 Constable's office is handling that. It's an incident that happened on their property and a shooting towards their station. They developed a suspect, and they believed through that investigation that this suspect was going to be in an area in the Med Center near OST. And more information will come out on that, I'm sure, from the Precinct 4 Constable's office about how they came to know where this suspect would be, how they came to know what his location would be. But because they believed this to be their suspect and he had already engaged in firing at a police station, they wanted to make sure that they had the necessary resources, and so they called for Houston Police Department SWAT assistance this morning. Therefore, Houston Police Department SWAT officers were staged in that area just in case they were needed, in case there was any kind of an encounter with a violent suspect who may be armed, considering what happened at the police station on Monday. When a Precinct 4 Constable's office, I believe at this time that to be a K-9 unit, was in that area, at some point he recognized this car and that this is possibly our suspect in this case. He goes to initiate a traffic stop, is my understanding at this time. He goes to initiate a traffic stop, and unfortunately the suspect does not stop and a chase ensues. That vehicle pursuit begins at that time, and then since HPD SWAT officers were already staged nearby, as I mentioned, they were close and able to also engage in the pursuit. At that time, many HPD leaders, including myself, Assistant Chief 10, and Executive Assistant Chief Satterwhite, we were downtown waiting for the beginning and the start of the Veterans Day parade this morning. When we heard that there was a chase going on involving Precinct 4 Constable's office for who they believed might be a violent and armed suspect, at the time it began, it was a long way from downtown, and the chase originally went south and away from downtown. However, out of an abundance of caution, we gave the order this morning to pause the start of the Veterans Day parade. I did not want that parade to begin and get people on the parade route, of course not knowing where this suspect might continue the chase and at what point it was going to end. So we paused this morning, and if you were out there and wondering why there was a slight delay on the start of the parade, it's because we were concerned about this pursuit. The pursuit continued, and as you know, it did come into the downtown area at one point. And so we had immediately already began staging resources in the downtown area to prevent any possibility of this suspect getting close to the parade route. So all of those actions were taking place as the pursuit was going on. Eventually, the suspect ended up exiting the downtown area, ended up on 45 North Freeway, coming out to this direction to the Greenspoint area. We had SWAT officers, as I said, engaged from the Houston Police Department with Precinct 4 deputies in this pursuit. Now, this is important. While the pursuit was going on, and this is preliminary information, and I'm sure Precinct 4 will be able to confirm at a later time all of the details. But I do want to share with you that at some point, this suspect during the pursuit was on the phone with Precinct 4's constable's office. They were on the phone with a dispatcher, this suspect saying things like, "I have body armor on. This is not going to end well." At some point, I've heard that there was a comment potentially, I don't know if it was to dispatch or to another Precinct 4 officer that was talking to this suspect. This suspect made several calls apparently while the pursuit was going on. And at some point threatened that this is not going to end well and I'm going to shoot cops. So all of these things our officers were aware of while this pursuit was going on, and more information was coming in. And more information was coming in that we needed to be as safe as possible and try to end this in a location that we could that would endanger, hopefully, not a lot of citizens, because we believe the suspect to be armed. The suspect ended up in this area, circled this parking lot several times. At the moment that it was possible for our SWAT officers to engage, HPD SWAT officers, that's one of the black Chevrolet Tahoes that you see parked over there, our SWAT officers actually on purpose went front head on and stopped the suspect by actually hitting his vehicle. As soon as that occurred to try to get his vehicle stopped, that suspect exited his vehicle with an AR-15 style rifle and immediately fired upon officers. Our SWAT officers returned fire, and also 2 Precinct 4 Harris County deputies fired during this incident. So a total of 4 officers discharged their weapon during this officer-involved shooting. 2 Houston Police Department SWAT officers. 2 Harris County Precinct 4 deputies. It is my understanding those Precinct 4 deputies also happen to be K-9 officers. During the exchange of gunfire, at some point the suspect goes down. 3 different TAC medics that typically work with our SWAT unit were on scene and immediately started rendering first aid to the suspect. Unfortunately, the suspect succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced deceased here at the scene. I will not be giving out a potential identity of the suspect. That will be for Precinct 4 to follow up on as part of their investigation, and at this point we can't confirm identity. It is only the strong belief that this is the suspect that fired on their station on Monday that they were actively investigating. It's an African-American male, we believe possibly in his 40s. Right now at this time we've only recovered 1 weapon on the scene, but we have not done a proper search of the suspect vehicle. That weapon is what appears to be an AR-15 rifle. There are a lot of rounds on the scene. I do not know how many rounds were fired. There is body camera evidence as part of this case, and obviously that will be reviewed. On the scene, we have investigators from the Precinct 4's office. We have investigators from the Houston Police Department Special Investigations Unit Homicide Division. We will be conducting the investigation of the officer-involved shooting. It happened in the city of Houston, and the Houston Police Department will be the lead on that. Regarding the criminal allegations on this potential suspect for the incident that occurred at the Precinct 4 Constable's office, they will be the lead in that investigation. The Harris County District Attorney's Office is on site and will work with us as well, and the Houston Forensic Science Center is on site. They'll be out here for several hours processing this scene. Let me talk about citizens that were nearby and clear up any confusion there. It is our understanding right now that there was a mother and a small child in a vehicle nearby. That mother and small child were not injured, but obviously distraught. Obviously very stressed when you find yourself in the vicinity of what turns out to be a suspect firing at police officers and officers having to return fire. In fact, Executive Assistant Chief Satterwhite checked on that child, I believe got the child out of the vehicle, and then we made sure that any citizens here that witnessed this or saw this are getting the proper attention that they need. It's my understanding that 4 citizens, that mother and that child and 2 others that I don't have detailed information on, were really stressed and felt some anxiety. We were telling customers to go back inside the restaurant that's here, trying to keep the scene as secure and as safe as we could, understanding that it could end poorly, and we were concerned about that during the entire pursuit. We do have 1 citizen, unknown age, a male, unknown identity, that was transported to Northwest Memorial, and it's my understanding that individual has a minor wound to the leg or ankle area, and it's possibly a ricochet or shrapnel from some kind of gunfire. I'm unable to determine how that injury occurred at this point, but that person was transported to the hospital for precautionary reasons only. There are no officers injured as a part of this incident. No officers were hurt. The suspect did have body armor on. When the suspect went down and stopped firing, as I said, 3 TAC medics immediately began to render aid, and that suspect was wearing some style of body armor. I don't have specifics on the type of body armor. That will be part of our investigation. A couple things I want to mention. We're out here working in collaboration with Precinct 4 Constable's Office. Very happy that they worked with us this morning and that we were collaborating out here and that the officers were working together and that the officers of these 2 agencies were engaged together trying to bring a violent suspect into custody. And so I'm very happy for that collaboration and that cooperation throughout the event. Our prayers go out to the officers that were involved in this and had to be engaged in such a violent encounter, for Precinct 4 and for Houston Police Department officers. And we give Constable Herman our full support as he continues his investigation with his officers on that original incident. With that, I think I've covered pretty much everything that occurred this morning, or at least bringing you